Exploring the Great Wealth Transfer by Ray Dalio. Hey there, folks. Ever wondered if the government pulled off a slick move, shifting a heap of cash from the public sector to the private one, all in the name of saving the economy? That's what the finance maestro, Ray Dalio, refers to as the wealth transfer. Picture this: a true financial dance with deficits skyrocketing and the government issuing trillions in debt. But will this maneuver have a happy ending? Stick around to uncover the mystery of this economic puzzle. Subscribe to the channel and join us on this journey. 5. Ray Dalio and the Great Wealth Transfer. Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater, one of the greatest economic minds, describes the Great Wealth Transfer as a once-in-a-century shift, impacting future generations. Hey, let me spill the beans about this incredible guy, Ray Dalio, who's like the finance guru, founder of Bridgewater, one of the world's largest hedge funds. He's talking about something called the Great Wealth Transfer, and man, it's something that happens like once in a century, shaking up the future for generations. He's keeping an eye on the economy and noticing something unusual, like the economy not reacting as expected to the Fed's actions. According to him, the government executed a massive maneuver, transferring wealth from the public sector to the private. It's like they created a shield for the private sector, making it less sensitive to monetary policies. A giant move that messed with the fundamentals of the economic game. Now, to prevent total chaos, the U.S. government and the Federal Reserve are doing unprecedented things. They slashed interest rates to zero, intervened to support companies and families with stimulus checks. But buddy, this comes at a cost, and here's where the Great Wealth Transfer kicks in. The government is issuing a ton of debt and funneling money into the hands of private individuals and companies. The catch is that this might have a risky consequence down the road. Dalio warns that, in the long run, these government deficits could turn into a debt spiral. And that's where the complex math comes in because, obviously, there's no free lunch, right? The government will have to choose between raising taxes, cutting expenses, or printing more money, each choice with its price. Dalio's trying to convey a kind of alert about the economic choices happening. Got the vibe? 4. Economic shift and government maneuvers. Dalio notes that the economy isn't responding normally to the Fed's tightening. The government orchestrated a wealth transfer from the public to the private sector, making the private sector less sensitive to monetary policies. All right, cool. Man, I'm seeing some stuff in the economy that's off script, you know? Dalio, who's on top of this game, is keeping an eye on this movement. The thing is, the economy is kind of crazy, not following the usual script when the Fed tightens things up. The government, man, pulled off a kind of magic trick, something Dalio calls the wealth transfer. Like they moved some money from the public sector to the private, sort of taking the private sector out of the line of fire of monetary policies. It's like they created a shield for it, you get me? A massive move that messed with the basics of the economic game. Now, to avoid total chaos, the U.S. government and the Federal Reserve are putting on a show. They cut interest rates to zero, went all in to support companies and families with stimulus checks. But my buddy, this cost a lot, and that's where the wealth transfer comes in. The government is kind of creating a mountain of debt and throwing money at the private sector. The thing is, this might have a dangerous twist down the road. Dalio is tuned into this and warns that, in the long run, these government deficits could turn into a mess, like a debt spiral. It's like a complex economic puzzle because, in the end, the government will have to choose between raising taxes, cutting expenses, or printing more money. And each choice has its price, my friend. We're in this economic journey together. 3. Government actions to avoid collapse. Unprecedented measures taken by the U.S. government and the Federal Reserve. Interest rate cuts. Intervention to support companies and families, including stimulus checks and unemployment benefits. All right, buddy, hold on to this. The U.S. government and the Federal Reserve are going all out. It's like never seen before. A hard-level move in the economic game, you know? They slashed interest rates, like zeroed that out, and are getting their hands dirty to provide massive support for companies and families. This move includes stimulus checks, man, meaning they're sending some cash directly to the people. And it doesn't stop there. They're tackling unemployment too, improving benefits for those going through a rough patch. It's an economic rescue operation, but of course it's not for free. This is where the wealth transfer comes into play. To avoid total disaster, the government is reaching into its pockets and issuing a massive amount of debt. And the destination for this money is clear. It goes straight to the private sector's families and companies. It's a kind of crazy way to keep the boat afloat. But the price of all this, my buddy, only time will tell. But it's unprecedented action for sure. Imagine the government pulling off these acrobatics to avoid a complete collapse. This economic saga is more thrilling than a Netflix series, huh? 2. Government deficits and debt. Dramatic increase in government deficits due to rising expenses. Issuing trillions of dollars in debt to sustain the economy. My buddy, things are getting serious. Government deficits are exploding, and the reason? Expenses are through the roof. The government is spending more than it's making, and that's like a red alert in the economy. The money is disappearing faster than we can count, you get it? To keep the boat floating, the government is resorting to a kind of risky move. They're issuing trillions of dollars in debt, like a rain of money to hold things together. It's the famous, let's print more money, but it's not really a magic act. It's more of a desperate move to avoid a total collapse. And here's where the wealth transfer shows up again. The government, trying not to let the economy sink, is basically transferring this mountain of debt onto the shoulders of families and companies. It's like a passing the buck game, where the government's bill ends up in our mailbox. I get it. It sounds a bit crazy, but that's the reality of this crazy economic world. Let's see where this leads, right? The saga continues. 1. Long-term consequences. Transfer of wealth from the government to the private sector. Dalio's concern is that growing deficits will lead to a debt spiral, forcing the government to print more money and increase inflation. Necessary trade-offs to balance deflation and inflation and avoid long-term negative consequences. Buddy, check this out. There's something happening behind the economic scenes that's kind of surreal. Dalio, who's like the finance guru, keeps emphasizing the wealth transfer. The government actually did a juggling act and passed some money from the public sector to the private folks. Like, gave a little nudge to the private sector so it wouldn't feel the full impact of monetary policies. But the thing is, this might have a price down the road, you get it? Dalio is aware of this imminent danger of a debt spiral. The idea is that growing deficits will force the government to print more money, and that's where the danger lies. Inflation. And we know that inflation isn't exactly the economy's best friend. To navigate this, the government has to kind of walk a tightrope in economic terms. It needs to balance deflation and inflation, otherwise it's a surefire way to trouble. Imagine, it's like they're at a crossroads where any choice can have a negative impact down the line. The only certainty in all of this? There's no free lunch in this financial universe, my buddy. We'll keep an eye on this saga and see how this economic drama unfolds. And hey folks, we've reached the end of this roller coaster ride through the economy. If you're as intrigued as I am by this whole wealth transfer story, you know what to do, right? Give that like, subscribe to the channel, and let's exchange ideas in the comments. I want to hear your theories about what the future holds for this dance between deficits, inflation, and the economy. Stay tuned. It's us building financial knowledge together. Big hug until next time!